How much do you need to retire comfortably? It's one of the most frequent questions we get asked as advisors. The most common error though is that people are always looking for a single number that provides the answer to this question, whoever they might be and whatever their lifestyle might require. But this is of course a complete fool's errand, as what you spend your money on retirement and what I spend my money on in retirement is going to be completely different. Lots of people though have tried to have a go and put a precise figure on things. The Pensions and Lifetime Savings Association and the University of Loughborough carried out a really large piece of UK-based research, and they concluded that a single individual needs around £37,000 a year and a couple need £54,500 a year for a comfortable retirement. They define a comfortable retirement as a lifestyle that allows you to be more spontaneous with your money. So you could have a subscription to a streaming service, spend 3 weeks on holiday in Europe every year, and have the ability to spend £56 on a birthday present for someone. Now, you might be sat there thinking that a Netflix subscription and a pretty mediocre birthday gift isn't exactly a luxurious retirement. Well, we also surveyed over 1,000 individuals who have more than £250,000 in investments in our Saltus Wealth Index report. Now, 60% of respondents believe that they would need more than £50,000 a year in retirement, regardless of their marital status. And over 20% believe that they would need over £70,000 a year to maintain their standard of living. The reality though is that everyone is different and all research pieces tend to come up with varying answers. So a much better approach is to take time with an advisor to analyse what you actually spend now and how this might change in retirement. And a plan can then be built specifically around you and your needs. So once you've worked out how much you might need, how much should you actually have invested when you retire? Well, the 4% rule is pretty famous all over the world. It was formulated by economist William Bengen, and he basically determined that regardless of when someone retires over a 50-year period, their pot will always last 30 years as long as withdrawals are maintained at 4%. Now, to make use of this rule, first you should check if you're eligible for a full state pension. If you've made 35 years of national insurance contribution, you should receive just over £10,500 at state retirement age, and this should hopefully increase with inflation for the foreseeable future. Now, the remaining income you might need over and above your state pension can then be divided by 4% to provide a very rough estimate of the pot you might need. So for a couple with full state pensions, who are after around £60,000 a year in retirement, they will need a pot of just under £1 million. And a single person looking to achieve the same will need over 1.2 million. Although it's really important to remember that these numbers are gross of tax. So if you haven't structured your assets effectively to reduce your tax position in retirement, you'll probably need closer to 1.5 million as a couple to achieve the same £60,000 net a year. Time's also going to have an impact, as the calculation only applies for 30 years. So if you want to retire at 55, you're going to need around 50% more on top of those figures to make sure your pot lasts until you die. There are some major flaws with Bengen's method though. It only analyses markets up to 1976, and so just doesn't allow for how modern markets and economies have developed and changed over that period. It also doesn't consider future return rates, as it's all based on historical data, and withdrawals could easily be needed for more than 33 years. And it takes all asset classes into account in all scenarios, so results would look pretty different across the risk spectrum. And finally, it assumes your withdrawals will stay exactly the same throughout retirement, and life really just doesn't work like that in practice. So the best method for determining how much you need to invest for retirement is really by having a bespoke cash flow plan created. This can take into consideration things like variable withdrawals, any capital expenditures you might plan to make, and also allow for a range of market returns as well. So how much do you need to comfortably retire? Well, have a cash flow plan made and find out. Rules of thumbs and estimates are really helpful to get you started, but really they can't be relied upon. If this is a question that's been giving you some concern, it's probably best to take some advice. Because remember, your money really does matter.